Does your organization use a popular framework? And do you want to help your developers use this framework securely? Then you have probably already looked at SAST tools and their support for this framework. But how do you evaluate to what extent these tools actually support the framework? My name is Peter. I am a security researcher at Semgrep, and I was a project lead tasked with bringing support for popular Python frameworks to the Pro engine. In this video, I'll talk about the two aspects of adding support for a framework to such a tool. First and foremost, we need to find real vulnerabilities in real applications that use this framework. Every framework adds their own functions, provides their own functions for common things that are needed to develop applications. One such example is sending back HTML responses. If such an HTML response contains user input, this could lead to a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So, in order to support a framework, we need to add rules that look for these specific functions and misuses of them to find vulnerabilities. At Semgrep, we have an internal list of common functionalities added by frameworks, and we use this list to evaluate our rule support for a framework. You could also look at false positives and false negatives. If there is an application that uses a framework with a known cross-site scripting vulnerability and your tool cannot find it, then this could indicate a lack of support for sending back HTML responses in this framework. However, finding false negatives is a lot of work and requires a lot of researcher time. You could use known vulnerable applications. In Python, for example, you could look at PyGoat or Django Goat. But those do not reflect real-world code. They are often smaller, less complex, and have different code constructs. For false positives, Semgrep uses open source code. We scan plenty of open source code and triage the results. For Python, I looked at more than 1,000 findings in close to 200 open source repositories and iterated the rules and improved them using this feedback. So rule support is where support for frameworks starts. And for some SAST tools, this is also where it ends. But not at Semgrep. With Semgrep, we also add engine support for unique data flow and control flow that is added by the framework. Without frameworks, this control and data flow is often very obvious. In this example, we have a hello route function. This function calls another function run before request. The run before request returns a value, and this value is used to return HTML code. In this example, we can easily track the data flow from the request object to the HTML code. However, the control flow and data flow become much less obvious when we use frameworks. In this Flask example, annotations are used to indicate that the hello route function is a route. Another annotation indicates that the run before request function needs to run before every request in this app. There is no explicit call to the run before request function in the hello route function. No data is returned by the run before request function either. Instead, some data is added to a global G object, which can store data for the duration of a single request. Control flow added by a framework like this is often called implicit control flow. When we at Semgrep talk about supporting a framework, we talk about engine support for understanding this implicit control flow. So when you want to evaluate the framework support for a SAST tool, don't only look for the rule support for functions added by this framework, but also look at the engine support to understand implicit data flow and control flow added by this framework. Of course, framework support should not be the only factor contributing to your choice. You can also take into account scan speed, developer-friendly workflows, and the ease of rule customization. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to hear more about what it takes to build a good SAST tool, let me know in the comments below what you'd like to hear me talk about next.